1905. Nikola Tesla files patent number 791723. The document is publicly available. Anyone can read it. The title: Apparatus for Transmitting Electrical Energy. The blueprint shows a tower with specific components: a metal dome positioned at the apex, a central shaft descending vertically through the structure, a resonance chamber positioned in the middle of the shaft, and at the bottom, a grounding system designed to reach underground water. The patent includes precise measurements: the ratios between the height of the tower and the depth of the grounding system, the positioning of the resonance chamber relative to the total structure, the material specified for each component. Tesla wasn't describing a concept. He was documenting a machine he intended to build, and did build, partially, before the project was destroyed. Place that blueprint beside a cross-section diagram of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Not an artistic rendering, an architectural. Survey conducted with modern measuring equipment, the kind used by engineers, not archaeologists. The Great Pyramid has a king's chamber positioned near the apex, a grand gallery descending at a precise angle from that chamber, a queen's chamber positioned in the middle of the descending gallery, and at the bottom, a subterranean chamber that reaches down to the water table, into the limestone aquifer beneath the pyramid. These aren't similar. The proportions match. The positioning of each critical element relative to the total structure matches. The relationship between the upper chamber, the descending passage, the middle chamber, and the lower grounding system matches Tesla's patent specifications within a margin that would be impossible if one wasn't derived from the other. For 2 centuries, Egyptologists have called the Great Pyramid a tomb. They've excavated, they've searched, they've documented every chamber, every passage, every architectural feature, and they've found no mummy, no sarcophagus with a body, no hieroglyphics describing the deceased, no art depicting funeral rites, nothing that would indicate this structure was built to house the dead. What they have found, consistently, are features that make no sense in a tomb, but are essential in an electrical power system. Massive granite blocks containing high concentrations of quartz crystal, chemical residue in passages that official explanations can't account for. Electrical anomalies measured by multiple research teams and then ignored. Water channels beneath the foundation that serve no purpose in funerary architecture, but are critical for resonance systems. When J.P. Morgan destroyed Tesla's Wardenclyffe Tower in 1917, he believed he was eliminating the threat of free wireless energy. He didn't realize the original prototype had been sitting in the Egyptian desert for millennia. Not hidden, not lost, studied by every major civilization, visited by millions, and completely misunderstood because we stopped thinking of it as technology and started treating it as a monument. This isn't alternative archaeology. This is engineering analysis. We're going to examine the physical evidence, the geology, the chemistry, the electrical properties, the mathematical relationships, and the documented suppression of both systems by economic interests that profit from controlled energy scarcity. The materials tell the first part of the story. If you're constructing a tomb, you use local materials. Giza sits on a limestone plateau. Limestone is soft, abundant, easy to quarry and shape. The exterior of the Great Pyramid is indeed limestone. 2.5 million blocks of it. That makes sense for a structure built in that location. But walk inside. The chambers that matter, the king's chamber, the grand gallery, the passages connecting them to the queen's chamber, those aren't limestone. They're granite. Specifically, rose granite. A stone that doesn't exist anywhere. Near Giza. It had to be quarried at Aswan, 500 miles south, transported down the Nile on barges, and then moved inland to the construction site. Moving millions of tons of granite 500 miles when you have perfectly functional limestone right beneath your feet makes no economic sense. It makes no practical sense, unless the material choice isn't about convenience or aesthetics, unless it's about function. Rose granite has a specific mineral composition, 85% silicon dioxide, quartz crystal. And quartz has a property that's been understood by electrical engineers since the late 1800s. When you apply mechanical pressure to quartz, the crystal lattice deforms slightly. That deformation causes electrons to migrate through the crystal structure, creating an electrical charge. This is called the Piezoelectric effect. It's not theoretical, it's measurable. Your quartz watch works because a battery applies pressure to a tiny quartz crystal, which generates a precise frequency that keeps time. Barbecue igniters use a spring-loaded hammer to strike a quartz crystal, generating a spark. Ultrasound machines apply electrical charge to quartz crystals, which vibrate at frequencies that can image inside the human body. Apply pressure to quartz, get electrical output. The relationship is direct, consistent, and well documented. The Great Pyramid contains millions of tons of granite, quartz-rich granite, stacked vertically. The upper blocks press down on the lower blocks with immense force. Gravitational pressure, constant, unrelenting, 24 hours a day, for thousands of years. That pressure on crystalline granite generates electrical potential through the piezoelectric effect. The structure itself, under its own weight, becomes an electrical generator, not a theoretical one, a measured one. In 1993, researchers from Ain Shams University in Cairo conducted electrical field measurements inside the king's chamber. They documented a standing electrical charge. The official explanation suggested static electricity from tourists, except similar measurements taken in passages that tourists never enter, that have been sealed since excavation, show the same electrical anomaly. The granite is generating charge, constantly. The structure functions as a geological battery. This isn't speculation based on ancient myths. This is physics applied to documented material composition under measured stress. Tesla understood piezoelectricity. His notebooks from the 1890s contain extensive experiments with quartz crystals under pressure. He describes using mechanical stress on crystals to generate what he called electrical oscillations. He recognized that if you could generate charge through mechanical pressure on crystal structures, you could create a self-sustaining system where the structure itself is the power source. He couldn't build with millions of tons of granite. Industrial age engineering didn't allow for that scale, but he could replicate the principle using tuned electrical circuits and smaller crystal components that mimic the same piezoelectric generation at a different magnitude. Both systems use the same physics, different scales, identical principles. The Queen's Chamber presents the second category of evidence. It's positioned below the King's Chamber, roughly in the center of the pyramid's mass. Egyptology calls it a burial chamber, presumably for the pharaoh's wife. No queen was ever found there. No artifacts, no inscriptions. What the chamber does have are two narrow shafts extending from its walls. These shafts are 4 inches wide. They run at precise angles through hundreds of feet of solid limestone, eventually opening to the exterior of the pyramid. The official explanation calls them air shafts, providing ventilation, or soul shafts, allowing the deceased spirit to travel to the stars. Souls don't leave chemical residue. Ventilation doesn't require chemicals. In 1993, German robotics engineer Rudolf Gantenbrink sent a small robot called Upuaut up the southern shaft. The robot carried cameras and chemical sensors. What it found wasn't spiritual. The walls of the shaft showed traces of zinc chloride, specifically hydrated zinc chloride, a chemical compound that doesn't occur naturally in limestone. The northern shaft, explored by a different robot the same year, showed traces of dilute hydrochloric acid. Again, not a natural component of limestone, a chemical that was introduced into that shaft deliberately. 2 shafts, 2 different chemicals, both leading into the Queen's Chamber. When you introduce dilute hydrochloric acid to zinc in an enclosed space, a specific reaction occurs. The acid strips electrons from the zinc, producing hydrogen gas, zinc chloride as a byproduct, and heat. Hydrogen is one of the most energy-dense gases in existence. It's also highly conductive when ionized. If you fill a chamber with hydrogen and then introduce an electrical charge, the hydrogen becomes a plasma, a conducting medium that can carry electrical current with minimal resistance. The evidence suggests the Queen's Chamber functioned as a chemical reaction chamber. The shafts weren't for ventilation or spirits. They were chemical delivery systems. Acid from one shaft, zinc-based compound from the other, meeting in the chamber to produce hydrogen gas. That hydrogen would rise. Gas always moves toward lower pressure. The Grand Gallery extends upward from the Queen's Chamber at a 26-degree angle. Hydrogen produced in the Queen's Chamber would flow up through the gallery, filling the space between the granite walls with a conductive atmosphere. This isn't ancient mysticism. This is industrial chemistry. Hydrogen generation through acid-metal reaction. The same process used in industrial settings today, just at a different scale and with more sophisticated containment. Tesla experimented extensively with hydrogen as a conducting medium. His notebooks from the early 1900s describe using hydrogen-filled tubes to conduct high-frequency electrical currents. He found that hydrogen, when properly ionized, could transmit electrical energy with far less resistance than copper wire. His notes describe it as an ideal medium for wireless power transmission. The Queen's Chamber producing hydrogen. The granite walls generating electrical charge through piezoelectric effect. the hydrogen providing a conductive pathway for that charge to move through the structure. The machine is starting to function, but generation and conduction aren't enough. You need a power source that drives the system, something that provides the initial energy that the piezoelectric granite amplifies and the hydrogen conducts. That source is beneath the pyramid. Ground-penetrating radar surveys conducted in 1999 by a team from Waseda University in Japan revealed anomalies beneath the Great Pyramid's foundation. Voids, cavities in the limestone bedrock, more specifically, water-filled chambers. The pyramid sits on porous limestone, and beneath that limestone runs an aquifer. Underground water from the Nile seeping through the rock, constantly flowing. When water flows through porous stone, friction occurs at the microscopic level. Water molecules moving past stone create vibration. That vibration generates what's called a physioacoustic pulse. It's the same reason rivers make sound if you listen closely. The movement of water through confined spaces creates frequency, vibration that propagates through the stone. The Great Pyramid's foundation is in constant contact with this aquifer. The entire 6 million ton structure sits on limestone that's vibrating at a frequency determined by the water flow beneath it. And frequency is everything in electrical systems. Tesla spent years studying resonance. Every object has a natural frequency at which it vibrates most, efficiently. A wine glass has a frequency. Sing that exact note loud enough, and the glass shatters because the sound energy matches the glass's natural resonance, amplifying until the structure fails. A bridge has a frequency. Soldiers are taught to break step when crossing bridges because synchronized marching can match the bridge's resonance and cause collapse. Find an object's resonant frequency, apply that frequency consistently, and you can transfer energy into that object with minimal power input. It's not about force, it's about matching the frequency. The water flowing beneath the Great Pyramid creates a resonant frequency in the limestone. The pyramid, built on that limestone, is constantly exposed to that vibration. And if the pyramid structure is designed to resonate at that same frequency, the vibration from below gets amplified through the entire structure. Tesla built Wardenclyffe Tower on Long Island, New York. Specifically, he chose a site on top of a massive underground aquifer. His blueprints show metal rods driven 300 feet into the ground, directly into the water table. The official purpose was grounding. Electrical systems need ground connections. But Tesla's notes reveal another purpose. He was tapping into the vibration of underground water. His calculations described the aquifer as providing a carrier wave, a base frequency that his tower could modulate and amplify. The movement of water through porous rock beneath his tower created vibration. His tower was designed to resonate with that vibration, amplify it through electrical systems, and broadcast it. Both structures built on aquifers, both designed to use underground water flow as the resonant foundation, both tapping into Earth's natural frequency and amplifying it through architectural and electrical design. Tesla didn't invent this principle. The Great Pyramid demonstrates it was understood thousands of years before he was born. He studied it, recognized the engineering, and attempted to replicate it using industrial-age materials and techniques. The top of the structure matters as much as the bottom. In any electrical system, you need a terminal, a point where accumulated energy exits. In a radio antenna, that's the tip. In a Tesla coil, that's the metal toroid at the top. In wireless power transmission, you need a conductive element at the highest point to broadcast accumulated charge. The Great Pyramid is incomplete. The apex is flat, missing what Egyptology calls the capstone, or pyramidion. The assumption has always been that it was looted, stolen for its gold value. Except every other pyramid in Egypt either has its capstone intact or shows clear evidence of damage from removal. The Great Pyramid's top is different. It's not damaged, it's precisely flat, as if the capstone was designed to be removable. Functional hardware, not decorative stonework. Ancient accounts from Greek and Roman historians describe the Great Pyramid's capstone as gold. Some accounts say gold-plated, others mention electrum, a naturally occurring alloy of gold and silver, all highly conductive metals. Positioned at the pyramid's apex, a conductive capstone would serve as the transmission terminal, the point where electrical charge generated by the granite through piezoelectric effect and conducted through the hydrogen atmosphere in the Grand Gallery would accumulate and be broadcast. Without the capstone, the system is incomplete. It's like a light bulb without the filament, or a radio transmitter without an antenna. All the generation and conduction functions remain, but there's no transmission point, no way for the accumulated energy to exit the system and be useful. Wardenclyffe Tower had a copper dome. 68 feet in diameter, positioned at the top of the tower, 187 feet above ground. Tesla's patent describes it as the terminal capacity, the element that accumulates charge and broadcasts it. Copper is highly conductive. The dome's size was calculated to provide sufficient surface area to handle the electrical load Tesla intended to transmit, both systems requiring conductive metal at the apex, both designed to accumulate and broadcast electrical potential, both designed so that everything below the terminal, all the generation and conduction, funnels energy to that single transmission point, and both mysteriously missing their transmission elements. The Great Pyramid's capstone disappeared from the historical record. No documentation of when it was removed or where it went. Wardenclyffe Tower's copper dome was salvaged for scrap in 1917 when the tower was demolished. In both cases, removing the transmission element renders the system non-functional while leaving the rest of the structure intact. You can't transmit power without the terminal. Both machines were deliberately disabled by removing the one component that allowed them to broadcast. The destruction of both systems follows similar patterns. In 1901, Tesla received funding from financier J.P. Morgan to construct Wardenclyffe. Morgan believed he was funding a wireless telegraph system, communication technology. That's profitable. You can charge for telegrams. In 1903, Tesla revealed the tower's actual purpose, not communication, power transmission, free electricity available to anyone with a receiver. Wireless distribution that couldn't be metered, controlled, or monetized. Morgan asked the question that ended the project. If people don't pay for electricity, how do investors profit from it? The answer, obviously, is they don't. Free energy eliminates the business model that energy monopolies depend on. Scarcity creates value. Abundance destroys it. Morgan withdrew all funding immediately. Tesla attempted to complete the tower using his own resources. He failed. By 1917, with Tesla bankrupt and the tower abandoned, Wardenclyffe was demolished. Not dismantled. Carefully. Dynamited. Explosives were used to bring down the tower, and the copper dome was sold for scrap. The destruction wasn't about recovering investment. The salvage value was negligible compared to what Morgan had already spent. The destruction was about eliminating a functional demonstration of free energy. A working system threatens every business model based on selling energy. It had to be destroyed completely. The Great Pyramid shows evidence of similar catastrophic damage. The King's Chamber walls are displaced outward by approximately 1 inch. These are granite blocks weighing 70 tons each. They've been pushed out of alignment by internal pressure. The displacement is uniform across all 4 walls, suggesting simultaneous pressure from inside the chamber. The Grand Gallery ceiling shows scorch marks, heat damage, in a structure that was supposedly sealed since antiquity. Fire doesn't create those marks. Fire burns upward, creating uneven soot patterns. These marks are uniform, consistent with electrical discharge or plasma burns. The subterranean chamber, the one that reaches down to the aquifer, shows evidence of catastrophic flooding. Not gradual water seepage through porous stone. Violent inflow. The damage patterns suggest something ruptured or exploded, flooding the lower chambers rapidly. What happened? Did the system malfunction? Was there an overload? Did the electrical charge exceed the capacity of the conducting materials, causing a discharge that damaged the structure? Or was it sabotaged, deliberately overloaded or disrupted to destroy it? We don't have enough evidence to answer definitively, but we know both systems were destroyed. Tesla's by economic interests, protecting energy monopolies. The Great Pyramid by an event that left it damaged and non-functional. And in both cases, the transmission element, the capstone, and the dome were removed or destroyed, ensuring the systems could never operate again even if someone tried to repair them. The pattern is too specific to be coincidence. Both machines built on identical principles, both designed for wireless power transmission, both using underground aquifers as resonant foundations, both using piezoelectric or electromagnetic generation, both requiring conductive terminals at the apex, and both destroyed or disabled by removing critical components. The Great Pyramid sits in the Egyptian desert today, incomplete. 6 million tons of precisely positioned granite, aligned to true north within 3/60ths of a degree, constructed with mathematical precision that modern engineers struggle to replicate. The granite is still there, still under pressure, still generating piezoelectric charge. The aquifer still flows beneath, still creating resonance in the limestone foundation. The Queen's Chamber still has its chemical shafts. The Grand Gallery still stands, ready to conduct. What's missing is the capstone, the transmission terminal, the final component that would make this a functional power system instead of a massive architectural curiosity. Tesla died in 1943. He died alone in a New York hotel room, broke, his greatest work destroyed 26 years earlier. Within hours of his death, the FBI seized all his papers, his notes, his research, his experimental data, everything. The official reason given was national security concerns during wartime. What was in those papers that threatened national security? Not weapons designs. Tesla was famously opposed to weapons development. Energy systems. Specifically, methods for extracting and distributing electrical energy from natural sources without possibility of metering or control. His research into resonance, into Earth's natural electrical potential, into wireless transmission. Some of those papers have been declassified and released over the decades since his death. Many remain classified. What has been released shows Tesla's obsession with ancient structures. His notebooks contain sketches of pyramids, not artistic sketches, technical diagrams, cross-sections with measurements, calculations about granite's electrical properties, notes about aquifer resonance and underground water flow. He studied the Great Pyramid. He understood its function, and he attempted to replicate that function using the materials and techniques available in the industrial age. He couldn't build with millions of tons of quartz-rich granite, but he could use electrical circuits tuned to specific frequencies. He couldn't rely on hydrogen generated through chemical reaction, but he could use electromagnetic induction to create conducting plasma. Different materials, different scale, identical principles. We're told we face an energy crisis, that fossil fuels are finite, and we must transition to alternative sources, that energy is scarce, and we must carefully manage limited resources. But standing in the desert outside Cairo is evidence that energy scarcity is a manufactured condition. The technology for abundant, wireless, freely available electrical power exists. It's been proven functional. Twice. Once by a civilization we barely understand, thousands of years ago. Once by Nikola Tesla, 100 years ago. Both times the technology worked. Both times it was systematically destroyed or suppressed, not because it was dangerous, not because it was unstable, not because it failed, because it succeeded. Because functional free energy eliminates the economic model that energy monopolies depend on. You cannot charge for something that's freely available. You cannot control what you cannot meter. The Great Pyramid wasn't built as a tomb because powerful people die and want monuments. It was built as a power plant because civilization requires energy and someone understood how to extract that energy from the earth itself using nothing but stone, water, and an understanding of frequency. Tesla's Wardenclyffe wasn't built as a scientific curiosity or a failed experiment. It was built as a working prototype of wireless power distribution, and it was destroyed not because it failed, but because it threatened to succeed. The granite still generates charge 24 hours a day, year after year, century after century. The aquifer still flows, still resonates, still provides the carrier frequency. The structure still stands, precisely aligned, mathematically perfect. The blueprint remains, tested by ancient engineers, replicated by Tesla, proven functional, then destroyed. Tesla's patent drawings are publicly available. Anyone can examine them. The Great Pyramid's architectural surveys are published. Anyone can study them. Place them side by side. The proportions match. The component placement matches. The relationship between generation, conduction, and transmission elements matches. They're not similar. They're identical in function. And that's not coincidence. That's evidence. Evidence that Tesla understood principles of energy generation and transmission that mainstream science treats as impossible or impractical. Evidence that those principles were understood and successfully implemented thousands of years before Tesla was born. Evidence that both systems were destroyed by interests that profit from energy scarcity. The Wardenclyffe connection isn't a theory. It's a documented relationship between two structures built on identical engineering principles, separated by thousands of years, both designed to provide wireless electrical power and both systematically destroyed to preserve energy monopolies. The question isn't how the Great Pyramid was built. Engineers can answer that if they stop treating it as a tomb and start treating it as technology. The question isn't even why it was built. The evidence answers that clearly. It was built to generate and transmit electrical power wirelessly. The question is, who turned it off? Who removed the capstone? Who disabled a machine that could provide abundant energy to everyone within range? And who benefits from keeping that machine disabled while we're told energy is scarce and we must carefully ration limited resources? The granite is still there. The aquifer is still flowing. The blueprint still exists, carved in 6 million tons of stone and documented in Tesla's patents. Tested, proven, functional. Destroyed, not because it didn't work, but because it worked too well. That's not ancient mystery. That's modern suppression. And the evidence for both is sitting in plain sight, waiting for anyone willing to look at it as engineering instead of archaeology.